ॐ न सदासीन्नो सदासीत्तदानीम् नासीद्रजो नो व्योमा परो यत् किमावरीवः कुहकस्य शरमन्न अम्भः किमासीद् गहनम् गभीरम् न मृत्युरमृतन्नरहिना रात्र्या अन्न आसीत् प्रकेतः आनीदवादग्गस्वरया तदेकम् तस्माद्धान्यन्न परः किञ्चनासा तम आसीत् तमसा गूढमग्रे प्रकेतम् सलिलग सर्वमा इदम् तुच्छेनाभ्युपहितं यदासीत्.
Today we have with us Professor Sharad Deshpande, former head Philosophy Department, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. Sir, I welcome you on behalf of Philosophy Department. But before we begin, I would like to request Dr. Kulkarni to give a brief overview of Professor Sharad Deshpande's contribution to philosophy.
Thanks, Dr. Tandon. Dr. Sharad Deshpande is former professor and head of Philosophy Department of Savitribai Phule, Pune University. During his distinguished career spanning over 5 decades, Professor Deshpande has contributed to 4 main areas of research, which include classical Indian philosophy, Western philosophy, aesthetics, and philosophy in colonial India. His contribution to the teaching, research, development, publication, and outreach activities of the Department of Philosophy of Pune University spans over more than 3 decades. He was National Professor of Indian Council of Philosophical Research in 2015. He has held a prestigious Tagore Fellowship instituted in 2012 at the Indian Institute of Advanced Study in Shimla during 2012-2014. He has been a British Council Visiting Fellow at the Universities of Liverpool, Aberdeen, and Oxford in the UK in 1998 and ICPR Visiting Scholar at Maison des Sciences de l'Homme, Paris in 2008. He has been a Resident Fellow of ICPR at Lucknow in 1985 and a Visiting Fellow at various state and central universities in India. Professor Deshpande has delivered several memorial lectures and keynote addresses, which include Schumacher Memorial Lecture at Nagpur University, JCP Dandrad Memorial Lecture at Bombay Philosophy Union, and Pratap Seth Vedanta Lecture at Indian Philosophical Congress. Besides, several keynote addresses at various universities which include Dibrugarh, Kolkata, and North Maharashtra University. In addition to many of his contributions to various research journals, Professor Deshpande's publications include Philosophy in Colonial India, an edited volume published by Springer in 2015, Philosophy of G.R. Malkani, an edited volume published by ICPR in 1997, 200 Years of Kant, edited volume published by IPQ in 2004, Theories and Forms in Indian Aesthetic Tradition, a co-edited volume published in 2009, Causation, Explanation and Understanding, published by IPQ in 2001.
Thank you, Dr. Kulkarni. Professor Deshpande, firstly, I would like to know about your philosophical career, your personal and academic background, and especially how you turned to philosophy.
My rendezvous with philosophy began when I graduated from SP College in Pune in 1969 with philosophy as major and sociology and psychology as minor subjects. I guess my choice to opt for philosophy was influenced by 3 factors. 1. The influence of Professor Kavale, our HOD in SP College, who had just returned from US, where he had studied pragmatism of William James and John Dewey. Professor Kavle drew our attention to some deep issues in theory of knowledge, especially to the concept of truth and its theorization, which was popularly known in those days in terms of correspondence and coherence theories of truth. Professor Kavle used to plead for the pragmatic theory of truth, which was appealing for its agent-centric notion of truth. But I still used to have doubts about it. Of these three different theories of truth, I always preferred correspondence theory of truth for its adherence to realism, but certainly not of the Platonic variety. We were also exposed to Plato's dialogues and the history of Indian philosophy. But all these courses were very introductory. But still I found them very interesting. In fact, in our classroom there was a board on which the famous quote by Mill was inscribed in metal letters.
Yes, who can forget this famous Mill's quote that it's better to be human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. It's better to be a Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied.
Exactly. It was an invitation to become a dissatisfied soul. And to a young mind like me, it was very appealing.
Yeah.
That inscription had a deep impact on me.
Yes, but what about the other two factors that influenced your decision to opt for philosophy?
The second factor was the monthly meetings of Pune Philosophy Union, which was a very active forum of philosophy teachers in Pune in 60s and 70s. Those meetings used to be held once a month in my college, and as students of philosophy, we were supposed to attend those meetings besides assisting Professor Kavle in organizing those meetings. It is in those meetings that I was first learned how to present a paper and ask questions. I remember the active participation of Professor P.R. Damle, Father Dusmet, and sometimes even Father Matthew Leatherley, who wrote that famous book Philosophical Trends in Modern Maharashtra. There used to be a very fair looking person called Mr. Keswani, who was the chief engineer in Southern Railway. He had training in philosophy. He also used to take an active part in the meetings. Sometimes even the public intellectuals like Prabhakar Padhye also used to attend those meetings. Therefore, attending those meetings was certainly a part of my training, which helped me a lot in my career. Now, it is a sad thing that Pune Philosophy Union ceased to exist from mid-70s. And now the third factor that led me to opt for philosophy was my personal dislike for studying any subject which is less analytic and more descriptive.
So, your liking for analytic philosophy, which you taught numbers of years, is prompted by dislike for descriptive studies?
Not only because of that, but yes, such likes and dislikes do play an important role in making our choices. But I must also clarify that I am not judgmental about descriptive studies like history, sociology, psychology or geography. Descriptive studies also contribute significantly to human knowledge, but somehow these subjects never appealed me.
Right, and I'm sure your interest in analytical philosophy was deepened when you joined the master's program of the Pune University.
Yeah, and we would also like to hear more from you about your teaching and research interest.
Yes, I will answer both these questions together. And this takes me to my entry into this university as postgraduate student in 1969. Those were really wonderful days. The university had nationally and internationally reputed faculty across all the departments. In Sanskrit department, we had Professor R. N. Dandekar, who was the doyen of Indology, Professor S.D. Joshi, whom we used to call as Panditji, he was a great scholar of Panini and who has attended Quine's lectures, which were later published under the title From a Logical Point of View, that famous book, which is an all-time classic in analytical philosophy. Quine, as you know, was one of the greatest American philosophers of our times. Likewise, in English, we had legendary Professor Nagarajan, and in politics we had Professor Shirsikar, who had set up the method of studying voters' behavior in Vidhan Sabha and Lok Sabha elections. As a student, I used to do voters' survey along with my friend Rajendra Vora, who later became head of the Department of Political Science of this university. Then in psychology, we had Professor Kothurkar, who was one of the early experimental psychologists in this country. There were many more such outstanding professors in all departments. In chemistry, we had Professor Arnikar, who was the first to introduce nuclear chemistry in this university. Looking back at all those great giants, we were really very lucky to have such towering personalities around us. In fact, Pune University was ranked as one of the 3 best universities in India in those days.
But what about your own department, the Department of Philosophy?
Well, philosophy department also had an equally reputed person of Professor Naravne's stature. He was the first head of philosophy department, which was founded in 1965. He was in Allahabad University before coming to Pune. He wrote extensively on Indian culture and civilization. His introduction to modern Indian thought has been a source book for many generations of social scientists all over the world. Similarly, his book, The Elephant and the Lotus, offers an excellent reflection on philosophy and culture. These are the classics. But unfortunately, he left Pune in 1969, just a few months before I took admission for MA Part 1. But I had seen him when I used to go to meet my friends who were doing their masters in the university. Professor Naravne had a very pleasant personality. He was a soft spoken person with that typical North Indian style of addressing the other, like aap, aiye, like that. His eyes were very captivating and a very pleasant personality he was. After he left Pune, we had no HOD and a permanent faculty in the first year of MA. There used to be a system of contributory teachers from colleges who used to come to take classes. Every teacher will come once a week for an hour. Of these professors, the persons who impressed me the most were Professor P.R. Damle, who was the principal of Wadia College in Pune, then Father Richard Desmet and Father Marneff, who were Jesuit scholars from Dinobili College in Pune. Professor Damle was an original thinker. In fact, he was an original thinker more than a routine philosophy professor. And in those days, he had debated with Bertrand Russell, which was quite unusual. I remember he took just one lecture on Spinoza, and that too in canteen, in our Aniket canteen, which I still remember for its depth and clarity. Dr. Desmet's teaching was also very interesting and they were much nuanced, and his interpretation of Vedanta from theological point of view was very new for us.
Very interesting, sir. But how did you turn to analytic philosophy?
Yes, I knew that you were going to ask this question to me. That again carries an interesting story. Actually, I had no idea of what analytical philosophy was until I came to university Our degree courses consisted of Plato's dialogues, histories of Indian and Western philosophy and logic. In fact, the small world of philosophy in Pune those days was heavily under the grip of British idealism and an attitude of proving Indian philosophy as superior to Western philosophy. But in MA, we had a paper called Recent Western Philosophy, which had a component of existentialism and analytic philosophy, especially that of Moore, Russell and early Wittgenstein. I found it extremely fascinating at that time. But then the teacher who was teaching this course wasn't really equipped to teach analytical philosophers, though she was very good at existentialism. Basically, she was a poet. So, we were a bit worried about the analytical philosophy part which we were supposed to know.
I see. Then how did you manage with that part? And who taught you analytical philosophy?
It was Dr. Bokil of Ferguson College. He was the only person at that time in Pune who was properly trained in analytical philosophy. He had his PhD from Rochester, and you will be surprised to know that his PhD supervisor was none other than the famous Kantian scholar Louis White Beck. L.W. Beck was a very famous Kantian scholar in those days. Actually, our batch was very small, and in those days MA Part 1 and Part 2 used to have combined classes. In all, we were 8 or 10 students from different colleges in Pune. There were 2 students from Ferguson College, Bakul Pandit and Naresh Sareen. They always used to talk about Dr. Bokil, and one day Naresh Sareen told us that Dr. Bokil is going to teach the same course in Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapith. I knew Dr. Bokil through Pune Philosophy Union meetings. He had impressed me through his sharp interventions. So naturally, we were all very happy and we felt relieved of the tension of analytical philosophy. And Dr. Bokil's lectures proved to be a boon. He taught us Moore's 3 famous essays, Dr. Tandon, you must be knowing. Refutation of idealism, defense of common sense and proof of an external world in great details. He also read with us Russell's theory of description and Strawson's criticism of Russell, and also Wittgenstein's picture theory. Dr. Bokil's lectures were so engaging, his style was so different from most philosophy teachers in Pune at that time. But most importantly, he introduced us to Moore, Russell and Wittgenstein's critique of many idealist doctrines which emanate from the root belief that external reality is mental or spiritual. This had a great impact on me. I became an ardent fan of Moore and Russell and thought that analytical philosophy is the only philosophy worth doing.
But sir, analytic philosophy has its variety of approaches, isn't it?
Yes, of course. But that we came to know in our second year MA in 1971 when Professor Barlinge joined the department as head. Actually, that was a turning point not only for the department but also in my personal life. I should say Professor Barlinge stirred up world of philosophy teaching community in Pune. He had travelled widely across the world, had taught in many universities in India and abroad, was a student of Gilbert Ryle at Oxford. He was a man of many careers and achievements, not only the students, but I guess even the tiny philosophical community of Pune was awed by his personality. He taught us Ryle's concept of mind, that very famous
Yes,
book,
very famous.
and Wittgenstein's philosophical investigations in great details. Here again, It was not just reading some text like concept of mind or philosophical investigations, but holding a view, having an approach to some of the most vexed problems in philosophy. That is what I learned from him. What matters in philosophy is not the system building or holding on to some dogmas, but an open and critical inquiry.
But I believe Professor Barlinge was also an unusual scholar of Indian philosophy.
Of course, you have very rightly called him as unusual scholar of Indian philosophy. He had learnt Nyaya from Mahamahopadhyaya Rajagopal Tatachari of Tirupati and had a firm grounding in classical Indian philosophy. But Professor Barlinge's approach was unlike most teachers of Indian philosophy, who more or less adopted Indological approach to the classical systems of Indian philosophy. He wanted all of us to learn Nyaya and therefore appointed a Nyaya Pandit in our department, and our department was the first in India to have a Nyaya Pandit.
I see.
Barlinge completely revolutionized our syllabus by introducing many courses such as philosophy of science, philosophy of mind, philosophy of history, history of philosophical ideas, deontic logic and modal logic. These were all very new avenues, new concerns for all of us. Those were the years of great churning, of excitement and of challenge. It is in this atmosphere that I completed my masters in 1971 and joined the department for doing PhD.
Okay.
But you didn't go for lectureship in some college at that time? Because I believe it was easy in those days to get a job in a college.
Yeah, actually I may share that after my MA result, the next day I received a call from the vice principal of Ferguson College, and he said that Sharad, you join the college from tomorrow, just bring in one application on plain paper.
Right.
But at the same time, Professor Barlinge offered me a research position in the department, and then he said that you remain in the department and that will in the long run benefit you, and I am very happy to say that it really did. Therefore, I preferred to pursue research in the department, and it paid me in the long run. It is in the department that I came in contact with almost all the leading philosophers of India at that time.
Sir, could you name some of them?
Oh yes, in those years, K.J. Shah of Dharwad, who was a student of Wittgenstein, Rajendra Prasad of IIT Kanpur, who was a student of C.L. Stevenson, then Daya Krishna of Jaipur, Ramachandra Gandhi, about whom I need not say much, everyone knows he who was. Then A.P. Rao, he was a great logician I have ever met. Then Dharmendra Kumar of Delhi, he also was a logician. Then Mrunal Miri and P.K. Sen of Jadavpur. They were all frequent visitors to our department for seminars, for viva, for examination work and so on. I should also mention another name of my very close friend, he also was a very distinguished philosopher, senior to me, called Suresh Chandra.
Oh.
He retired from Central University of Hyderabad, and now I was told that he expired just last year. Now, I have learned a lot from each one of them, which has widened my understanding of philosophy, and acquaintance with them, that is acquaintance with those philosophers, made me cosmopolitan in the real sense.
Mm-hmm.
That is what this department has given to me.
But your PhD dissertation is on Gaudapada Karika, and this is somewhat surprising given your exposure to analytic philosophy through all these people you have mentioned.
Yes, here I should make one point very clear, and I should share it with you, that my fascination for Western philosophy and particularly to analytical philosophy was never one-sided. I always thought that as an Indian or as a philosopher of Indian origin, I should not ignore my own past. I should not ignore my rich philosophical traditions.
Right.
And therefore, I should not neglect studies in Indian philosophy. And that also was a philosophy of Professor Barlinge. Though he himself was immensely enthusiastic about introducing us to new trends in Western philosophy, he always insisted that at the same time we should equally take Indian philosophy seriously, because if we do not take Indian philosophy seriously, then who will? That question he used to ask us. So therefore, Professor Barlinge convinced me to research on Gaudapada Karika, which is the most significant philosophical work in early Vedanta. But that convincing was not from any sentimental appeal, but he explained to me how Gaudapada is raising an important issue of criterion to distinguish the real from the unreal, or the waking experience from dream experience. And you will see that how deep epistemological issues are involved here.
Yes.
Now actually in 1972, Professor Barlinge had written a thought provoking article called Gaudapada's Theory of Knowledge, which he had written in honor of T.M.P. Mahadevan, whom everyone knows that how deep a Vedantin scholar he was. Professor Barlinge suggested to me that I develop the full argument of Gaudapada and present it in the idiom of analytical philosophy, to which I had a fairly good exposure by that time. I was reading at that time Norman Malcolm's analysis of the epistemology of dream experience, which was quite fascinating. I could see that Gaudapada is tackling an epistemological problem and offering his own model of dream experience. And most probably, Gaudapada is the first in the history of Indian philosophy who has tackled this problem as a problem of epistemology. This prompted me to accept Professor Barlinge's suggestion that I should work on Gaudapada.
Professor Deshpande, we would like to know something more on your work on Gaudapada. I am sure it must be different from many other works on Gaudapada.
I do not know whether it is different from other works or not, that is for others to judge. But when I was doing my research, I discovered that Gaudapada scholarship, that is the scholars engaging with Gaudapada all over the world, they were mainly Indological than philosophical. So that scholarship was mainly Indological rather than philosophical. And it was divided between two camps, the Advaita Vedantins camp and the Buddhist camp, as it were. Professor T.M.P. Mahadevan and Professor R.D. Karmarkar have interpreted that Gaudapada was an Advaitin, and accordingly they have interpreted Gaudapada Karikas. And these are the two great champions of Gaudapada Karikas,
Yes.
and insisting that Gaudapada belongs to the Advaitin thought system and not the Buddhist thought system.
Yes.
Now on the other hand, Vidhushekar Bhattacharya has interpreted Gaudapada as a Buddhist. Now both these interpretations were at odds with one another. So if I were to write on Gaudapada, then I had to join one of those camps. But I have avoided being the part of either Advaitin or the Buddhist camp. That way I always like to be an independent person. I do not like to be a part of any system or camp or so on. That again goes back to my training in analytical philosophy. Now, I was not interested in this kind of Indological approach to the ancient text, and an ancient philosopher like Gaudapada, who is addressing the sheer epistemological problem. See, the difficulty of most writings in Indian philosophy is that we treat Shankaracharya, Gaudapad or Mahavir or Ratnakirti, Dharmakirti as if they belong to past, as if their concerns were their concerns and they are no more our concerns.
Yes.
So, the manner in which we discuss these philosophies or their views remain historical or merely descriptive. So, I wanted to be free from that. So, I was not interested in that kind of Indological approach to the ancient texts, and an ancient philosopher like Gaudapada, who is addressing the sheer epistemological problem. I wanted to make Gaudapada's problem as our problem. I wanted to make Gaudapada a living philosopher whom we can relate to our problems. So, I have taken an independent stand on Gaudapada.
Okay. What is that independent stand?
As I have said, I wanted to rescue, so to say, Gaudapada from the Indological approach, which was not analytical but descriptive. The main debate in that approach was, and in those days was, about Gaudapada's date and the alleged Buddhist influence on him. Like when, what is the period of Gaudapada?
Yes.
When did he live? Whether he lived or not? Whether Gaudapada is a real person or a fictional character, and whether one particular chapter of Gaudapada Karika, the second chapter, whether it is written by him or not.
Yes.
So, these were the issues, or whether Gaudapada Karika was written by one person or many persons, and so on. Now, these issues are important. I am not denying that they are not important, but they did not appeal me. Following Professor Barlinger's suggestion, I have decided to disentangle epistemological issues in waking and dream experience analysis, and particularly the issue of criterion to distinguish the real from the unreal of our waking and dream experience. I have interpreted Gaudapada as saying that in the ultimate analysis, we have no real or logical criterion to distinguish between the reality of waking and by implication the reality of the world around us,
Yes.
and the unreality of the dream experiences. He says ultimately everything is vitatha,
Yes.
and everything is the only statement that we can make about reality is that it only is, it only exists. Any characterization it falls outside the reality of it.
Okay.
Therefore, I have focused on this argument and brought it back in the present day debate on this issue.
Right. Moving on to your subsequent work, Professor Deshpande. While you were in this university, you have pursued various branches of analytical philosophy, such as deontic logic, in which you were in conversation with Professor von Wright, who was himself a formidable analytical philosopher, or your work in the philosophy of science, in which you have a book, Causation, Explanation and Understanding, or in the field of aesthetics, in which you have edited a very substantial volume, Aesthetic Theories and Forms in Indian Tradition, along with Kapila Vatsyan, in which you have also contributed an essay on history and historiography of Indian aesthetic tradition. In fact, you have written so many papers and on such diverse topics that one is really astounded. And so, can you tell us something more about this diverse trajectory of your research projects?
Yes, this diverse trajectory gives an impression that I did not emerge as a type, that I did not emerge as a Buddhist scholar or a Vedantic scholar, or I did not emerge as an analyst or a phenomenologist or a man of philosophy of science. This is true, but this is how I am. I could never stick to any particular project for a long time. I was attracted to many things and thought I should do something in that area. I should do something in each such area that attracted me, whether it is philosophy, art, literature, film studies, and so on and so forth. I think the diversity of my projects reflects my personality. But yes, deontic logic, or what is called action theory or action logic, was my passion once upon a time. You have mentioned Professor von Wright and my interaction with him. Professor von Wright has developed a certain calculus to see the interconnection and logical entailments between commands, permissions and prohibitions. That is, deontic logic is all about this, the interconnection between commands, prohibitions and permissions. I have interpreted the notion of permission and through it the idea of not doing something as opposed to doing something in a different way. This essay was published in one of the issues of JICPR, and there precisely I have challenged the analysis given by von Wright as far as permissions are concerned. And I may share this with you that in a seminar in Lucknow long ago, and I think in 86, when Professor von Wright had come, I have presented that paper, and then he said, yes, your analysis adds very significantly to this whole debate. Then as far as causation, explanation and understanding is concerned, Professor Kulkarni, I may say that it was basically for students. In that book, I have explicated the notions of causation and explanation and also various models of explanation like DN model or causal model and so on and so forth. And coming to that substantial volume on aesthetics, which is Theories and Forms in Indian Aesthetic Tradition, which I co-edited with Kapila Vatsyayan, D.P. Chattopadhyay, and also in which I have written about history and historiography of Indian aesthetic tradition. Actually, this volume was to be edited by Professor Barlinge, but due to his demise, it came to me to complete that project. That was a very enriching experience and a very challenging task at the same time. That provided me an opportunity to interact with some of the best minds in the field of Indian aesthetics, like Kapilaji herself, then Dr. R. Satyanarayana and Ashok Ranade, then Bhaskar Chandavarkar and M.R. Gautam from the field of Indian music and musicology, then Arvind Zamkhedkar, Satish Andhare and Deepak Kannal from the field of ancient Indian painting and architecture. Then the great Sanskrit scholar Vidyanivas Mishra ji and K.D. Tripathi from Varanasi in the field of Natya Shastra and so many others. And while writing an introductory essay to this volume, I have argued that the idea of history in the field of arts is not like the history in science. That is, history in arts and history in science, they are two different things. History in science is always unidirectional. That is, one event takes place, then there is another event, then another event, and the history is written of those events which follow one another. Yes. But in the field of aesthetics or in the field of arts, it is a discontinuous continuity. I have coined a term that history in arts is a history of discontinuous continuities of various ideas and practices and theories. So that volume was entirely based on this basic idea that the history of art and the history of science are two entirely different understandings of history, of the idea of history.
So, talking of continuity, discontinuity in directions, etc., can you tell us something about the projects that you have taken up in the last 10 years after your retirement?
Well, Dr. Kulkarni, you are now pulling me out of the memory lane and now you are bringing me to the present day. Well, my current interests are again a part of a process. I think we are all in a process, so my current interests are also a part of a process. In 2008, I gave a lecture in Göttingen University on Hegel's reception by modern Indian philosophers during the colonial period. I titled that paper as Hegel in India, which then grew into a full-scale research program for which I coined a suitable term, philosophy in colonial India. As I began to think about this idea, I realized the research potential of this project. How did Indian philosophers towards the close of 19th century were working under colonial conditions? What were the colonial influences that shaped their mode of doing philosophy? How they were related to their own indigenous traditions? How did this whole debate about tradition and modernity emerge with reference to Indian philosophy? How did people like Malkani and K.C. Bhattacharya and Radhakrishnan reinvented the tradition of Vedanta? I wanted all these issues to be discussed, and this had to be a collaborative effort, bringing in various aspects of the great transformation of the practice of doing classical systems of Indian philosophy, the darshanas, as you know, was undergoing. So, with the participation of outstanding scholars from India and abroad, I had organized a seminar in this department in 2009 and later a focused study group in Indian Institute of Advanced Studies in Shimla. The outcome of both these seminars is now published in a book form and has received acclaim from scholars all over the world. In fact, last September, University of Vienna had organized a seminar based on the theme of this very book. But the real turning point in my career came in 2012, Dr. Kulkarni, when I was offered the Tagore Fellowship in Indian Institute of Advanced Study at Shimla. Government of India in 2012 had set up a Tagore Center to commemorate the 158th birth anniversary of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, and therefore the government of India had instituted 4 fellowships in that center. I was one of those 4 fellows. The 3 colleagues, 3 other fellows, were from different diverse disciplines. There was Mr. Prasanna, a very noted dramatist from Huggudu, Karnataka; Sari Nasube, who was a poet and a philosopher from Iran; then Professor Shirshendu Mukherjee, a professor of English, a Tagore scholar from Delhi University. So, we 4 of us were the first Tagore fellows of the institute. Now, as a Tagore fellow, I was not obligated to write anything on Tagore. That was the best part of that fellowship. The fellowship offered me full freedom to do whatever I wanted to do. Taking advantage of the unlimited freedom which that fellowship had offered, I decided I will not write on Tagore, but I will be in conversation with Tagore.
Wow.
So, that is the distinction I made, writing on Tagore, and there is virtually an industry of that. people write Tagore on education, Tagore on paintings, Tagore on dance, Tagore on poetry, Tagore on this, Tagore on nationalism, Tagore on that.
Right.
So I decided I will not join that industry. I will not join that camp again. So I decided I will not write on Tagore, but I will be in conversation with Tagore. Now I thought that this will enable me to put myself in front of Tagore. I will be able to ask him questions. I should not listen to Tagore always. Tagore should also listen to me sometimes, isn't it?
Right.
And for that, conversation has to be there.
Yes.
So, so this theme of conversation I found is so fertile that it cuts across the time and space restrictions. You can converse with Shankaracharya.
Of course.
You can converse with Plato.
Yes.
Or you can converse with someone who is yet to be born. So you can converse with people around you, you can converse with people in the past, or you can converse with the people who are dead, who are converse with the people who are yet to born. So conversation gives you that latitude. So it cuts across time and space restrictions and puts you in conversation with the world. Now a conversation with the other is a release of creative energy which is hidden in us. Accordingly, my Tagore Fellowship work is titled Conversing About Conversation and Conversing with Tagore. I have written this whole text, you will be surprised and also happy to know
Yes.
that I have written this whole text in a dialogue form.
Wow.
In fact, I believe that philosophical writing should always be in a dialogic form.
Right.
And Socrates was Plato's dialogues which are
Yes,
famous. In
yes,
fact,
yes.
in philosophy there are many such famous dialogues,
Yes. Yes.
but we have given up that tradition. And even in Indian tradition, there are very famous dialogues,
Yes.
and I need not narrate all of them.
Yes.
But we know, in fact, ancient Indian philosophy, the Upanishadic philosophy was always done in a dialogic form.
Yes.
So I don't know why this dialogic way of writing was given up, and we write long essays, passages after passages. That is very tiresome. Anyway, now, so my Tagore Fellowship work is basically about the idea of conversation. What is conversation?
Right.
It is not merely talking to one another. Conversation is an opening up of mind to other. Conversation is the recognition of the other. Conversation is also the recognition that you can converse with yourself.
Okay.
So I have developed this idea that while conversing with you, I am also simultaneously conversing with myself.
Okay.
So this whole book or this whole text is on the idea of conversation.
Yes.
So therefore, conversing about conversation and conversing with Tagore.
Okay.
So I must mention that my current interests, since you have asked me about my current interests, I must say that they are largely in the area of literature and philosophy, but not to see literature and philosophy as different from one another, but to see them in continuity with one another.
Yes.
I see philosophy and literature as continuous. So you may say philosophy as literature, or you may say literature as philosophy, whatever way you please. A lot of creative work is being done with this approach, which I find quite fascinating.
Sir, can you name few such work?
Yes, I think I must. Okay. I should and I must.
Yeah.
Because these works are not known to philosophy teachers, students, and in general philosophical communities in India.
Yes.
That is because we have kept ourselves away from these new emerging trends in philosophy, new emerging trends of writing philosophy, or new emerging ways in which the old philosophical problems,
Okay.
can be written in a very novel manner.
Right.
So there are quite a number of these new works. The first I will mention is about a writer called Gos Smilevsky. He was a Macedonian novelist, and his book Conversation with Spinoza, a cobweb novel. There is a very interesting story about this book. He had sent this book for publication and it got rejected 56 times. But when on 57th time when he sent it for publication, the book was published and he got the highest literary award
Wow.
for being the best creative work.
Wow.
So this book, Smilevsky's book, Conversation with Spinoza, a cobweb novel, you can see these photographs here.
Of course.
Then Nag Bodas, he was my friend from Madhya Pradesh. He has written a Hindi play called Padho Farsi Becho Tel, and which is a Hindi play on Wittgenstein,
Wow.
for which he had got this ICCR fellowship to write this book. Then in Marathi, long ago, we have Vago Maidev's Socrates, which is a full-fledged play on Socrates' life. And then I must mention this book, Bruce Duffy. There is an author called Bruce Duffy. His book, The World as I Found It. It is a fictional rendering of events that took place in the academic life of G. Moore, Bertrand Russell and Wittgenstein. This is a very fascinating book.
Right.
In fact, all students of philosophy must read this book,
Of course.
because this is a fictionalized version of the actual events, the actual debates, the actual conversations that have happened in the life of G. Moore, Russell and Wittgenstein.
Wow. Good.
And then more recently, a book by Rebecca Goldstein. That book is called Plato at the Googleplex. Why Philosophy Won't Go Away. Now see, look at this title of this book, Why Philosophy Won't Go Away. People think that now philosophy has no future. There is technology, there is this, there is that. So philosophy is nowhere seen. Our philosophy departments are very small, neglected, so on and so forth.
Yes.
So people think that there is no philosophy, and in fact the most governments all over the world think that philosophy is not needed. What is needed is commerce, trade, whatever, science, technology and so on. So the question, why philosophy won't go away, why it won't go, why it won't vanish, it addresses a very fundamental question, namely that why the progress in philosophy is invisible as compared to the progress in science, which is very visible.
Yes.
You see, we can very quickly say what is the progress in science, and then we can give many instances that this was not there before, now it is there. Now that thing was not discovered before, now it is discovered. In this way we can show, pinpoint the progress in science. But in philosophy, what is the progress? We are still discussing the problems which were discussed by Plato.
Yes.
We are still discussing the problems which were discussed by Shankaracharya.
Right.
So where is the progress in philosophy? Many people ask this question.
Yes, yes.
To that, this book answers to
Okay.
that question.
Okay.
She says that this question is posed in a fictional form. Where is progress in philosophy? So this question is posed in a fictional form, in which the historical Plato, the Plato who have lived in Greece
Yes.
and so on, the actual Plato, the historical Plato and the fictional Plato,
Okay.
Plato which is a fictional character,
Okay.
who is our contemporary, is made to answer this question.
Right.
So fictionalizing Plato relieves us from taking everything that a philosopher of the past has said as infallible. This is again a very interesting thing. You see, our tendency is to say that whatever the philosopher has said, maybe he is Plato, maybe it is Socrates, maybe it is Shankaracharya, or maybe it is even Russell and Wittgenstein, it is
Right.
unfallible, that is, it cannot be challenged.
Yes.
But the fictional Plato can challenge those views.
Okay. Okay.
a fictional Bertrand Russell can challenge the actual Russell.
Okay.
Okay, or a fictional Shankaracharya can challenge the historical Shankaracharya. Now, what is the idea of challenge? Challenge here is not rejecting them, but challenge is to deepen the philosophical ideas which they have propounded.
Okay. In the current context.
In the current context, or in relation to our concerns and so on.
Right.
So, this I find very interesting, and only I think philosophy will progress in this way.
Right.
We cannot take what our forefathers have said
Yes.
as permanent truths. We should be able to challenge them,
Right.
but challenge not the way in which nowadays people challenge things. You
Right.
see, challenge is not rejection, but
Right.
challenge is to see the possibility of widening the horizon of those views
Absolutely.
which were held by our forefathers.
Right.
So, therefore, a fictionalized Plato or a fictionalized Tagore or a fictionalized you, I can fictionalize you also,
Okay.
and a fictionalized me, I can fictionalize myself,
Okay.
open up with one another to experience the unexperienced possibilities. See, the whole
Right.
point is that what is philosophy?
Mm-hmm.
My definition of philosophy is this.
Yeah.
I will not say philosophy is analytical philosophy. I will not say philosophy is phenomenology. I will not say that.
Okay.
I will say philosophy is exploration. Philosophy is finding out what we have not experienced as yet. Philosophy has to entertain those immense possibilities and reflect on them. This is my idea of philosophy.
Right.
So, I say fiction imagines reality in its full form. That is a, if you want a one-liner of my philosophical definition, it is this, that fiction imagines reality in its full form.
Right. So, along with your interest in fiction, I know that you also have very serious interest in art. And there you are not just a consumer of art, but you are a painter yourself. So, how do you pursue this activity, which is itself a very demanding kind of activity or pursuit, along with your philosophical work?
Oh, so you have gone to my paintings and my hobby of painting.
Right.
Yes, it is my first love, I should say. Painting is my first love.
I see.
Actually, I wanted to become a painter, but my father insisted, and rightly I think, that I take some degree first and then go in for painting, because in those days
Right.
becoming a painter was not a good proposition for earning livelihood.
Yes.
So, my father very rightly advised me that I should earn some degree and then I should go for painting. But in the process of taking the degree and then getting involved into further activities and career, painting remained behind, but it remained behind as a hobby. So, at the end of the day, painting remained a hobby, but somewhat cultivated hobby I should say. Here are some of my paintings, and right now I am developing the theme of moon watchers
Right.
and also human faces.
Okay. Very interesting, sir. Can I ask now a completely different question? It is for young students of philosophy and for young teachers of philosophy. What is your advice to them?
I will not give any new advice. I will pass on the same advice given to me by my teachers.
Wow.
I believe in this sort of continuity,
Of course.
which is the backbone of our Indian tradition.
Right.
You see, in Indian tradition, there is Shankaracharya. Before Shankaracharya, there is a whole tradition of his gurus.
Yes.
Then after Shankaracharya, again there is a continuous tradition.
Right.
So, I believe in that kind of continuity of thought. I do not believe in ruptures.
Right.
So, I will give the same advice which Professor Barlinge gave me, or in explicit ways, but the advice which I got not in any verbal way, not in any formal way, but by observing what all these philosophers I have mentioned, Shah, Daya Krishna and so on, what I have learned from them, that also is a part of what I can give as an advice. So, my advice is, one, that philosophy is, to do philosophy is not to hold any dogma. Do not hold a dogma even for a second. Always be a dissatisfied soul. Always be a dissatisfied soul. It is only when you are dissatisfied can you proceed, can you progress, can you proceed further, can you progress.
Yes.
And again, what you think new is never new. It is always there in the tradition in some way or the other.
Right.
All you have to do is to find out how we are deeply rooted in our tradition. Maybe it is language, maybe it is culture, maybe it is music, maybe it is philosophy.
Right.
Our tradition is what makes us. We are what we are.
Yes.
Because our tradition is what it is.
Right.
I mean, this is the advice, this is the only advice that I can give. The part of that advice is that don't become pedantic.
Right.
Don't try to throw jargons, which is nowadays very popular.
Yes.
Don't try to throw and scare others by throwing jargons at them, and mostly those jargons are borrowed jargons. They are all from West. Be Indian, think Indian, and do something for Indian philosophy. This is what I have realized.
Okay.
Recently when I was in Vienna, I found out, previously also, that nowadays Indian philosophy is being done more seriously by scholars abroad
Yes.
than
India.
than what we do in India.
Yes.
And if we do not do Indian philosophy seriously, then who will do?
Right.
It's the location, in one of my articles I have written that now the location of Indian philosophy is shifted to the West. It is no more, it is nowhere in India.
Yes.
So, we have to change this situation as early as possible.
Thank you, sir. We are grateful that you spared your valuable time for this conversation.
Right, yeah.
I'm sure that viewers will be benefited by this learned talk by Professor Sharad Deshpande.
Exactly.
Once again, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tandon and Dr. Kulkarni.
You're most welcome. Yeah.
ॐ न सदासीन्नो सदासीत् तदानीं नासीत् रजो नो व्योमा परो यत् किमावरीवः कुहकस्य शरमन्न अम्भः किमासीत् गहनं गभीरम्